Hey folks, Dan Barrett from Screen Watching here. I just had a really unique life experience. I just had a conversation with Superman. Look, obviously not Superman. He's a fictional character. People keep reminding me this. But look, I talked to Brandon Routh. He played Superman in Superman Returns almost 20 years ago now, as I say this. Time has, marched on. Look, he's in Australia for the Metro Comic Con, which is taking place in Melbourne this weekend. I'm Sydney based, and look, it's incredibly disappointing to me because I'd really like to have gotten along to that. There's some amazing guests I've gotten out for that one, and hopefully Metro Comic Con starts going national because they seem to be putting on a pretty good show there in Melbourne. But look, Superman, one of my favorite characters in literature. I've got a young daughter. Her middle name is Lois. And that probably speaks to the fact that if Superman isn't my favorite character in literature, Lois Lane definitely is. Why am I so drawn to these two comic book characters? And it really just comes down to one, they've been just part of my life for the entirety of, my existence. Superman's been omnipresent. I'm a child of 1980, which means 2 years after that Christopher Reeve's Superman film first debuted. So look, those films are still pretty hot when I was a youngster, and that probably instilled it in me initially. But through the cartoons and definitely the comics over the years, I've just been a lifelong Superman fan. I like that this is a man of the media. I like the idea that Clark Kent, he tries to help the world in the best way he can through journalism. When he can't do that, when, there's a barrier up that stops him from being able to save the world with a pen and paper or word processor, he ducks out, gets into the phone booth, gets the Superman costume out and about, and takes off and deals with the problem. Who doesn't want to be able to have that extra, trick up our sleeves to be able to deal with the world's problems? But anyway, I'm having a chat with Brandon Routh. I got really nervous just as I hit the record button because I just looked behind me here. I've actually got a piece of original Superman art from it's the last issue of the recent Lois Lane miniseries sitting up on my wall. I don't think you noticed the Daily Planet sitting up there in the top frame of it, but I just got really self-conscious about it, and it kind of just threw my game entirely. But, I soldiered on, in the best way one can. So, look, not a big issue in the slightest, but, it just made me feel weird. Folks, this is my chat with Brandon Routh. I hope you enjoy it. If you enjoy this conversation, like and subscribe to this YouTube channel. My co-host and I, Simon Foster, well, he's Simon Foster, the co-host. I'm Dan Barrett. The two of us publish a whole bunch of videos and interviews and whatnot each and every week here to the channel. So like and subscribe, you'll start getting some more. Find me at my newsletter, alwaysbewatching.com. Folks, this is my chat with Brandon Routh. Brandon, it's extremely exciting to have a chat with you for the Screen Watching podcast and YouTube channel and all the other things that we do. I'm particularly excited to talk to you because you're probably my second favorite Superman, and that sounds a bit rude, but come on, Christopher Reeve,
Same.
Yeah.
I don't know that I'm my favorite Superman, but he's my Superman. So,
yeah.
No harm.
Look, it's always awkward to start these interviews because you want to delve into some really meaty topics to begin with. And when you get to my question in a second, you'll know the awkwardness of the phrase meaty just then.
Okay.
But look, I remember reading a news story about you when you were filming Superman Returns to begin with, and I'm going to try to put this as delicately as possible. There was a story about how apparently costumers had to find a way to hide your voluminous manhood because it was distracting on camera. Now, I also remember reading a very similar story about Henry Cavill when he took over the role of Man of Steel. And to me, this kind of reads like Warner Brothers marketing stories to make the new Superman seem as super as possible,
100%.
etc. Now, let's assume for the record that you're every bit the Superman that you've been reported to be, and we'll put that aside. But I was wondering for you how it felt going from jobbing actor to suddenly being part of a huge marketing machine where every element of you is up for grabs, so to speak.
Yeah. I had no idea what was happening for the,
Yeah.
I didn't know what to expect necessarily, and it was very naive. And that was probably one of the worst, not that it was even that bad, but one of the most awkward things that came up during that experience, because it's like then I was talking about that, and that's not what I wanted to talk about. But it was somebody created a story to make it a something, and that's was the case is that everybody wears a cod piece. So, there's nothing there except for the cod piece covering the bits.
Oh, look, don't say there's nothing there.
No, I'm saying that it's not, you're not noticing nobody's noticing and distracted
Mm.
by it's all uniform.
But I mean, broadly though, you were really sort of thrown into the deep end. You'd gone from jobbing actor where, you'd done spots on like the Gilmore Girls and a few other, bits around the place to suddenly being at the forefront of this really big marketing campaign. Like, how does that impact you as a person? Do you become really protective then, or is it
Uh,
just something you just kind of have to put out of your mind while you focus on the day to day?
I get a little bit protective, I guess. I think the biggest thing was just not knowing how my regular life would be,
Mm.
walking around the streets and attention. So Superman being such a huge iconic role, I think I scared myself a little bit about uh how um how much Clark Kent I needed to be in the world. All the times people watching or looking, what have you. I think the biggest thing though, based on that is just, Superman for me is a character and he's an archetype, but he's more than that to me. And who who Superman is who I I really do try to be, and as much in his ethos as possible as a human being, just because it's pretty great. Um, so I'm not a perfect person, but I think I always put maybe a little too much pressure on myself to be a role model, even though
Yeah.
he was really asking or looking for that. So I think that put pressure on me to, you know, do things differently, maybe, or be more worried about choices or decisions that I made. Um, but on that, it really wasn't that much of a disruption in my life, other than paparazzi from time to time, which you know that that's not that big a deal when you have to deal with it for a little while. And I don't have to deal with it right now, not for a long time. So I haven't been that special for a while. So.
Oh, look, you're special to all of us.
Oh well, not in that way. I don't need to be that anyway.
So I did open this saying that you were my second favorite Superman, but also I think you might be my favorite Clark Kent. And the reason for that is you bring a sense of sort of tamped down goofiness, I guess, to the character a little bit. Like you can see that real delineation between Clark Kent and Superman. And Christopher Reeve did that to a certain degree, but he didn't really quite feel contemporary in, I guess, the way that he presented that, whereas you absolutely did. And I was wondering how much thought you really put into that presentation of both flip sides of the character and their screen portrayal.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, I think I had felt like I had more room to offer a few more colors with Clark than I did with Superman, because I myself felt more like Clark than
Mm,
Superman as a 25-year-old. Um, Superman, I my biggest focus was to bring grace in his movement, in all aspects of movement. Um, and for Clark, it's kind of hard to put into words, but Clark is always he he's a little bit Ray Palmer, but Ray Palmer hadn't existed yet for me.
yeah.
The Atom, in that his zest for life and sharing and being a part of, like, sharing information, like he's so excited about it, that's part of why he's so excited and happy all the time, is to share all the good news and be a part of the world. And there's a piece of that that's maybe started with Clark for me, which was, as Kal-El, he's Kal-El at the farm with his parents, and he's, that version of himself. Superman, he has to be the hero. And as Clark, he's kind of getting to, like, be human, and that's fun. And so, he's not playing an act. It's just kind of like silly and um a safe, fun space to, I don't know, almost be like a kid, to be a normal human being. So whether he's trying things out or not, I don't know. It's just more of a more real. I guess I added more authenticity of Brandon to the Clark, because that's when Kal-El is actually able to be more human in a way.
Yeah. So I guess one of the things with starring as one of these big IP characters is that when you stop playing the role, the character just continues on without you. And so as I speak to you today, it's literally 1 year to the day that James Gunn's going to have a new Superman movie out with a new actor playing Superman. I was wondering what your relationship's been with the Superman character through media since Returns. Do you actively try to keep up with the movies or TV shows, or you try to keep it at a distance for yourself?
No, I mean, I'm not avid, but I certainly know what's, I'm knowledgeable about most of what's happening in the film and TV world.
Mm.
Obviously worked with Tyler Hoechlin, fantastic job over on Superman and Lois, and working with him on Crisis. And uh, I know James just through social, friends of friends and stuff, and so I've wished him well and that whole production. And yeah, I mean that's
Yeah.
I'm wishing everybody well. I want Superman to be the best version of Superman that it can be for everyone who wants and needs and appreciates the character.
Yeah, so I guess maybe on the flip side of that, in 10 years' time, the character enters the public domain. Now,
Wow.
inevitably, a producer's going
Right.
to come up to you and say, hey, look, do you want to star in a new Superman movie? How interested would you be in something like that? And is there actually still anything about the character you'd like to explore? Particularly now, as it's like 20 odd years since, I mean, by the time that comes out, it'd be 30
Yeah.
years since you played the character. So different maturity, life stages.
Yeah. I mean, that's a wild thought, the whole public domain thing. Yeah. I don't know. I haven't thought about that as far as it
Yeah.
being in public domain, but there are certainly a lot of things that I'd like to. I mean, I've had a lot of ideas and over the years about other stories and Superman themes that I think are valid and worthwhile. So I mean, I don't know. I can't answer that question. I
Yeah.
sure I can say that I definitely I definitely would appreciate and would love to play the character again at some point if that opportunity arises and it's the right opportunity.
Yeah, cool. I mean, you mentioned actually, I'm not sure if you mentioned it, but you said you do have a son.
Yes.
Does he care about Superman at all? You were talking about wanting to instill the value of Superman generally in your own life, but what about drawing upon those to raise your kid with the right sort of sense of values? Do you think about that at all in relation to that?
Well, I mean, yeah, it's part of my again, it's part of just who I am to a degree, but I don't
Mm.
I never talk to him as Superman. But no, of any of the people that are close to me, he'd probably say that I'm the least Superman like because he knows that I'm a flawed, not imperfect human being. Um, so he's a big fan of or been a big fan of Spider-Man in the past,
Yeah.
and I think Ray Palmer outranks Superman as far as the characters I played, but they're rising up in the list uh, for Leo. Um, I think it's a really challenging thing for. I have no idea. I mean, my parents were wonderful, but they weren't actors. They're musicians, and but they're not. A guy who played Superman. So it's a it's a different experience for him, I'm sure, having a dad that everyone thinks is amazing, but yet, forgets things sometimes and, makes him do things that he doesn't want to do because we have to get out of the house and he has to stop doing on the iPad or whatever it is, So it's hard to live uh to be a public persona and carry on the archetype of Superman and that kind of thing, and then deal with realistic like life experiences sometimes, because it's, yeah.
Yeah. Look, Superman's a dad in the comic books these days, but like I haven't seen him once try to get his kid out of the house because they're on the iPad. Like it's just, it's a different experience.
Yeah, it's different relationships.
Yeah. Look, speaking of relationships, Superman Returns, it's got a bit of complicated legacy these days. It's got some post-Me Too issues related to the director Bryan Singer and your co-star Kevin Spacey. It's colored the way that, look, I mean, I was a huge fan of Kevin Spacey. It's colored the way I've watched a lot of his work in the years that have followed. Uh, Obviously, for viewers, it's going to color the way that they watch Superman Returns. But how do you look back on that experience, and how has that sort of colored your reflections? Do you think back on the film?
I think I'm able to keep it separate to a degree.
Mm,
Uh, not that the impact of all of that isn't real for everyone who has been impacted negatively by anything, by actions of other people. But I think that the Superman story is a true Superman story, and everyone, what's on screen is the best version of creativity and of those people. So I think that, you know, I don't know. I think that for me anyway, I still enjoy and love the movie.
Yeah.
I think it's just with that little bit of asterisk sometimes, maybe I'm not as over the top, exuberant, and I certainly don't talk about everyone involved in the movie the way
Yeah.
one would like to praise the aspects that are wonderful in the movie that are from some of those people. I mean, it's a challenging thing in life to have the good and the bad from people. How do you handle that?
Yeah. I mean, it sucks because obviously you want to be able to speak sort of positively about what
I don't
seems
want
to
to
be,
have
I'm assuming, a
anything
fairly positive
tarnishing
experience.
tarnishing the
Yeah.
Supes, tarnishing Superman. So it's really it's unfortunate for the character as a whole, and the movie, but yeah.
Yeah. Look, sort of just winding things up. Obviously, you did actually film that Superman Returns film in Australia. Is this your first time back to the country since then?
No, nope. I was here for we did a screening uh after the movie came out, like a year after the movie came out, and then I
Yeah.
was in Perth a couple years ago for a different convention, and my first time in Melbourne, and my first time back to Australia in about 4 or 5 years. So happy to be
Yeah.
back.
So, I mean, obviously here for the convention, but is this an opportunity for you to get a bit of a holiday in at the same time, or is it really just business? Then you're heading off again?
It's mostly business, but I'll have a little bit of time to see Melbourne for a day or so before I head back. I go all this way, I take at least one day. So
Yeah.
should I see if I'm here? What do I do?
Yeah, no, you've got to. Look, Brandon Routh, it's been an absolute pleasure having a chat with you. Thanks so much and enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Thank you very much. I will do.
Okay. Thanks, man.